with the values question, we all say I have values, I have morals, but then when hey, so what are they? Give me three of them. You know,
Mm.
many people haven't really sat down to think about, well, what is it that I value?
Every day, life brings its challenges, but being formerly incarcerated brings a whole new set of obstacles. Today, Executive Director James Richardson joins the podcast to share how Four Horsemen not only help with employment and important next steps, but also to help people find purpose in life as well. So, let's do it.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. I see you broken and beat, head pulled down over your eyes. Every part of you wants to surrender, but darling, you were meant to survive.
James, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm like really intrigued by what you guys do because I feel like you're trying to lend a hand to people who are maybe in some just, tough circumstances. And well, I just want to hear all about it. So
Okay.
can you give us the inside scoop to who Four Horsemen are and what made you want to get started in this?
Sure. So the Four Horsemen is really funny because we started from it was four gentlemen, myself included. They kind of got together, and we were an interesting lot, if I can say. Uh, One day I was sitting, we were eating a Thanksgiving meal with some family members, and was just talking about some things that I wanted to do in life. And so what we what we were discussing was how we can, impact other people's lives and how we can do things for people in the future. And my brother, who was formerly incarcerated, he was really interested in working with people that are formerly incarcerated. And another family member was interested in it, and the fourth was as well. And so, while the other two family members, they are married into my family, we all have different backgrounds. I am a leadership expert, spent 30 years in the military. My brother spent 30 years in and out of prison, so that gives him a specific expertise as well. And then the other two, one was a high school principal, and the fourth was he worked in behavioral medicine. And so the four of us kind of got together, put our different strengths together, and we came up with what is now known as the Four Horsemen. And the Four Horsemen, what we try to bring to the table is a different perspective on how to help people that are formerly incarcerated. So that's a long way around to just saying that the Four Horsemen are in the business of rolling our sleeves up and helping out where we can.
That's an awesome way how that started, the Four Horsemen name itself. Because I was hoping you're gonna get into how it became called the Four Horsemen, and now I can envision the exact four human horsemen that that helped start. And you got a
Yeah.
really good diverse of people in there too, from the actual practical sense to the theory based sense too, where like you said, your brother has that inside experience to where he can talk from experience and go, okay, well, yeah, that might work in theory, but in actuality, in practice, maybe we could tweak things here or there. That's um that's
Hey,
awesome stuff.
Daniel, I got to tell you, you just keyed in on something that's really interesting. The reason why we found our success is because we listened to my brother. My
Mm,
brother has spent, years being incarcerated, and his criminality was born of his drug addiction. And so trying to solve the drug addiction without incorporating the criminality aspect or vice versa never worked. right? You have to look at a person as a whole person and not just a person who has committed a crime or someone who has a drug addiction or someone who is hard to find employment. They're an entire person. And listening to my brother give suggestions on how to help entire people in this population was mind-numbing. I mean, we learned so many things. And one of the biggest takeaways for us is that there are a lot of organizations out here that mean well, that are doing great things, but they're not helping the people in the way that they want to be helped. And we never wanted to be that. And so, whoever loves a person, knocks on the door and says, "Hello, my name is James. I'm from the government. I'm here to help."
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, we wanted, so we always wanted to discover where the needs were and then provide those needs. And so we look at it from a different perspective, and looking at it from a person who's been formerly incarcerated and keying in on the things that he needed help with. That's how we got our start, and that's how we actually made our first big strides here in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, what were some of the things that you would learn from your brother, in specifics that he had said, "Hey, when people get released, we're experiencing this type of challenge. We can't do this, or we're, a lot of times I know people going back just because they didn't have X. What were some of the specifics that he was able to kind of give you guys?"
Oh wow, tons. Here's a few. So one of the first things that we stopped, we wanted to have job fairs that people would actually get hired in, and job fairs happen all the time, all around the country, but
Yeah.
typically it's the police department, the fire department, government agencies, different organizations that don't take people that are formerly incarcerated. And it's mandated for people that are on probation and parole to go to these job fairs knowing that there's no jobs for them, but it's mandatory to go there.
Oh,
So
that's
one of the
awful.
first things that we did was, yeah, it's horrible. And this, as a person who's formerly incarcerated, that there's no job waiting for you, but you're still mandated to go there,
Oh,
right?
jeez.
And so we wanted to turn that on its ear and only invite employers who were willing to hire people that are formerly incarcerated.
Hmm.
So we'll have a job fair where we might have 5 or 6 different employers willing to give people that are formerly incarcerated an opportunity to at least have the interview. And when we have our job fairs, we have the formerly incarcerated and their family members only show up. No one else is
Hmm.
invited. So
It's
that
exclusive.
on
That's
both sides of the equation, they know what they're getting. And so people walk out of there all the time with a job on day one.
Oh, that's
Big
awesome.
difference. We would have never learned that without my brother. Another thing that we would not have understood without talking to my brother is once you've been in the system, you have a, a deep caution from government agencies. And so if there's a government agency that provides jobs, a government agency that provides housing, you're pretty hesitant to want to go. And so um, we wanted to make sure that whether or not it was a government agency or a religious background, because the other side of that, as my brother said, that sometimes people want help, but those that are out there helping that are nonprofits, they're affiliated with a church.
Hmm.
They will only offer help if you go to their services, if you
Wow.
become, saved, or all of these things. And so there
Yeah.
was always a hook. And so, understandably so, everybody has their own reasons for wanting to help. But oftentimes, those who are receiving the help is like, look, I just want a place to stay. I don't want to go to church,
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so we said, no government, no church affiliation. We're going to do this on our own and do it by establishing relationships with governments and religious organizations because they still have the connections. But when we become that in between with none of those affiliations, people are more apt to come to us.
Yeah, you guys are providing an exclusive like experience to them too. They've got to love that they're going to a job fair where only people like them are really getting hired. It's jobs that are only like offering for their demographic
Yes.
that maybe have a criminal history that most jobs just aren't um willing to do. And that's just that's so bureaucratic government to send formerly incarcerated people to job fairs just for them to be able to say, yeah, well, we did send them to a job fair. We do have resources. It's kind of like getting the emails from your old college alumni saying like, oh, we do have employment resources for you and employment opportunities.
Right.
And it's like, you're
Right.
come on,
Yeah.
you put that in your brochure, but sure, but do you really? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
that is that is awesome that you're providing that, because you're the only person I could say, and group or organization that I know of, that actually is so hands on with that.
Yeah.
I don't know any other
Mhm.
and that model could be so used in every city across America. Those types of job fairs would be so beneficial.
I'm gonna give you a secret. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Plain and
Yeah, yeah.
simple. And so what we show is that we care. We show that we see them, we meet them where they are, and we accept them for who they are. And that alone is how we get into the door. And that alone is how we help people grow, and they experience the character growth and all the other things that comes with knowing that you have somebody on your team that's there cheering you on, as opposed to having to fight the entire world in order for you to get a scrap, And so I think that the way that we do it, um, it, it took me a while to figure out how to scale, right? Because um, you can't teach a person compassion. you
Yeah.
know that's something that you either have in you or you don't. You can't teach a person to have empathy, right? It's something that is not, I can't say take these classes and now you have it, but finding different people that have those character traits to begin, then I can teach them all the other things that it takes to be a good, resource provider as a four horseman,
Mm.
work in the four horseman workforce. Yeah.
And you guys are out of I know it's Georgia. Is it Atlanta?
Yeah, so like to say Metro Atlanta, I cover about three different counties out here. And we're a little bit bigger than an army of one, so
Yeah.
I try to reach people that I can actually see. We meet on phone, Zoom, Google Meet, in person. However a person can really meet is how we typically meet. But the interaction that's face to face is so much better
Oh
because
yeah.
being a person, yeah, being a person who is you know I consider myself skilled in communication, and being a person that has some communication background, seeing people in person and being able to really pick up on those social cues is a winner, because oftentimes, especially with my population, they will say something and mean something totally different. And if you don't pick up on the cue, you might miss the forest for the tree.
Yeah, yeah, because you're, in person, you're getting the, the body language, the tone, the, I mean, everything all in one shot. And I
Yeah.
asked too, the location, especially because I was on your website. I saw some numbers about Georgia in terms of being part of the overall criminal justice system, and I mean, I mean, shocked me because I didn't think Georgia as a state had as many people involved in terms of when you're talking parole, probation,
Yeah.
incarcerated. Could you give us a little bit of insight into kind of um those numbers, those stats, and maybe why? And also, it makes sense that your organization is in that location now.
Yeah, yeah, we are here by design. When I retired from the army, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit. When I retired from the army, I wanted to go to a state that had the biggest need, because I figured that, for a brand new organization that was going to start small, I wanted to, find some quick wins in order just to build. Um, the need in Georgia is just staggering. There are over 500,000 people in Georgia that are in the criminal justice system, and oftentimes we think of the criminal justice system as just being who's in jail, who's in prison, right? But there's so many other layers. Who's in jail, who's in prison, who is currently paroled, who is on probation, who is in uh oh gosh, and I forgot the names right now, but the homes, right? And so, who are the different people that are transitional centers is the word I was looking for?
Mm.
Who are in transitional centers? All of these people, it equals, it's almost 1 in 20 Georgians. 1 in 20
Wow.
Georgians. You get a room full of Georgians, and you're more than likely to have somebody that's either on probation or on parole in that group. And so we can look at it from a number of different ways. We've got low jail and prison rates, right? They're comparable with the rest of America. They're not horrible, right? I think we rank about fourth or so. But the amount of people that get the alternatives to prison, the amount of people that go to transition centers, probation, or parole, that is through the roof. And here's something that amazed me. Georgia has more people that are um, involved with the criminal justice system than not only every state in America, but also every country on the planet Earth.
Oh, wow. So
It
they
is
are the
remarkable.
highest.
And so the absolute highest. And it's not even close. It's not even close when you compare um, apples and apples. It's just not even close. And so there's a number of things that Georgia's doing great. We had a former governor, Governor Deal. He started a fantastic program with creating the Department of Community Supervision. It is one of the things, it's one of the groups I work with, but it's one of the things that is really getting after how do we solve this recidivism problem that we have in the state of Georgia, right? And recidivism is nothing more than somebody who continually goes back and back to jail and or prison, and seems like it's just a revolving pipeline of people that go in, they stay in for a little while, get out, stay out for a year or 2 years, and then get back in. And so he did a lot to try to get after how do we solve that problem. But there's just so much more to be done. And so having other nonprofits, in the state of Georgia that do similar types of work that I do is helpful. Having the government agencies that are really trying, they're really trying to do some things differently. It's very, very, it's extremely helpful. Georgia Department of Community Supervision is by far one of the best organizations, government agencies that I've run across, with the way that they show how they
care,
how much they care. And it's real interesting. Yeah, because and not to, give a plug for them, but I work with them often. But the hat that the probation officer and the parole officer has to wear can sometimes come off a little harsh, and sometimes be a little brash, and that comes with working with the populations that you do. But the other half of what they do is exactly what the Four Horsemen does. They help with providing resources, so whether or not that's a job, housing, or health. And that's where we find the commonalities, between what Georgia is doing and what the Four Horsemen is doing, because um, as a government agency, there's some sticking points, right? If someone is telling them something, they have a duty their duty and honor bound to do something about it if
to
it's
look
breaking
into
the
it.
law,
Yeah.
right? For for a company like the Four Horsemen, I don't if you're not breaking the law in my sites, I don't have a duty in the way in while I'm coaching and counseling, I don't have a duty to to tell something that's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I can I can I can stop something from happening
Yeah, I was just gonna say you could be
because of
proactive
my
actually.
ability. Yeah, right. I can be a lot more proactive when I'm aware of different things that are going on. I'm trying to find a politically correct way to say, that being a nonprofit and not being associated with the local governments, I'm able to just reach people more. I can go to different places and get people to see how they can be better by showing better, I guess, is the
Yeah.
best way to say it.
That's actually a really good point. I never thought about that. That you actually have that autonomy to be able to make a greater impact on
Yeah,
someone's life than their probation officer. Because that probation officer, if they're if they're kind of giving hints or being like, no, don't do this or do that. I mean, we'd call them corrupt, But I
right.
love that you, I love
Right.
that you have that ability to kind of take your have your own judgment and be like, okay, well, I know where this guy, and that actually allows the person you're working with, I guess, to be more honest with you, to be forthcoming in what's going on in their life. And then you're able to then get past the red tape that they put up for the
Yes.
probation officer, and so which allows that kind of communication to flow way more directive, way more fluent and genuine, which obviously
Yeah.
just is better for everybody.
Here's an example. Uh, Back in December of 2021, one of my clients calls me up on New Year's Eve, early in the afternoon, and she's crying and she's telling me that she messed up, that she was suffering from addiction, and so we had already sent her to a n- narcanon, right? And she was already being helped with them, but that's all on your own, right? And so she got high and she had to go in to go do her urinalysis with her probation officer, and her probation officer had already told me that if she failed another urinalysis, that she was going straight back to
Oh,
prison.
jeez.
She knew she was going straight back to prison. Yeah. And so now
Not a good way to start the year.
from a non right. So from a nonprofit's perspective, right? I'm looking at this young lady. Here's an addict who, because of her addiction, is going to end up back in jail. So what can I do to, prevent that, right? And so from the government's perspective, here's an addict who violated one of her parole violations, and because of the violation, she has to go back. So I totally understood the government's perspective, and so here's how I dealt with that. I told her that I was going to be with her no matter what, whether or not she went back in or not. And then I helped her kind of coach her through what are the things what would happen if she reports on herself, what would happen if she ran, what would happen if she just crossed her fingers and, hope for the best, and then what those outcomes would look like at the other side of it, right? I didn't tell her what to do. I let her see for herself what to do by showing her all the different things. Then she said, well, I think I need to go tell my probation officer what I did. And I told her, I said, well, that's a great idea. If you tell your probation officer, I promise you that I would speak with the probation officer at the beginning of the year and let her know, you know, everything that just transpired between the conversation with me and what led up to it and all this stuff from my perspective. Fast forward, I get a call back around the third or so, and it was the lady who had done the drugs, and she told me that the probation officer decided not to violate her because she was so honest,
Oh, that's good.
that she said that she was giving her another chance, right? And all she wanted was for me to ensure that she went to the narcanon at least once a week.
Oh,
That's a
good.
win.
Yeah.
That's a win. Yeah. And so this was December 21. October of 22, so a few months ago, um, she comes to me and she's telling me that she's almost been a year clean, right?
Hmm.
You can't make this up. You can't make this up. So here's this woman who because somebody saw the value in her instead of just discarding her and was there with her to kind of work through, a government employee couldn't do it that way because they're bound by their oaths.
Yeah.
They have to do things a particular way, right? But because I don't have that same issue, they're more free to tell me all kinds of things. I actually often have to say, "Hey, look, there's some certain things I don't want to
I
know."
was gonna
Right?
ask you.
But
Yeah, I mean,
because
I'm
I'm
sure.
able to, yeah, yeah, there's certain things I don't want to know. I'm here to coach you. I'm here to mentor. Yeah, but I can tell you stories all day long about stuff like that. Yeah, former gangbangers that are no longer banging, that are actually working. Now, mind you, he might be working. I think it's Hardee's right now, but
Mhm.
he's working in Hardee's, raising his daughter, living with his girlfriend. 3 years ago, he was 100% gangbanging, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the Four Horsemen, we get the wins, I really believe, because we're there. I'm straight, no, I don't talk to people sideways, I guess, as the streets like to say, right? I come at you directly, and so if I can do it, I'll let you know I'm gonna do it, and you know that if I say it's gonna happen, you could take that to the bank, and I think that that's what people really appreciate about the Four Horsemen.
No, that's a really good way to put it, and I love your ability to just kind of free flow and use your own judgment how you want to help people, and I feel like if I was in those shoes, the temptation to like want to make the better decision for them, I think would be so much for me to handle because there's obviously
Right.
a best decision, but you're speaking from an independent, non-emotional point of view and don't have to deal with the consequences from on their end either. So it's like, okay, here it is. But I I feel like I'd be weak and just, try to make it for him, which wouldn't help him in the
Yeah.
long run,
Yeah.
really, because
Well,
she made that decision for herself and it worked out for herself
exactly.
on being honest. So now she has that
Yes.
positive consequence that if I'm honest and I'm open, I'll be treated fairly. And I earned that extra chance. She didn't like,
Yes.
slime
Yes.
around and try to, sneak around and get past the
Mhm.
test. I mean, she earned it in an open fashion and it worked out for her. That's amazing to hear.
Absolutely. And so, one of the things that I tell our participants is, as a coach, I am a certified John Maxwell coach, and as a coach, I have no answers. I have tons of questions, but I believe that people already inherently have their own answers, but someone has to be there to kind of coax it out of them, and try to massage it as they're coming to a better understanding. I just had a phone call this morning from a young lady who hasn't committed to our organization yet, but she's at the I need some resources stage. But she shared some things with me, and she's trying to decide if where she's staying at is the right place, or does she need to go back home. And so I laid it out for her. Instead of giving her answers, I was like, well, tell me why you're afraid to do X, right? And tell me what's holding you back from doing Y. And just having her say it out loud, she's like, "Oh man, Mr. Rich,
Yep.
you're really helping me." I was like, "No, I want you to be clear. I'm not helping you. I've not told you one thing that you haven't already had in your head. I'm just helping you say it out loud to see it clearer. That's all it is. That's what coaching is.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're having people just listen to themselves, I guess, openly. That makes sense.
That's it. That's it. That's the secret sauce to being a good coach."
Yeah, and really, I mean, what you're walking them through, I feel like, is the most important part, at least just from my overall just perspective, I guess. If somebody gets out, like being formally incarcerated, I feel like the biggest skill is, communication for sure, but conflict resolution, because all these are, I feel like, just conflicts, and you're giving them kind of a little, I don't know, a plan or putting them in the bird's eye view of their own life to work their way through conflict resolution, which is so deep with I mean, that goes so deep. I did some research into the psychology behind conflict resolution, and really, like, they broke things down to 5 different strategies of getting yourself through conflict. And number 1 was avoiding
Mhm.
conflict, just completely going, no, 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 I'm not even gonna. And I feel like that is what most people end up doing, especially not even being formerly incarcerated. Most people with their health, going to the gym, whether it's financial avoidance, emotional avoidance, we just want to avoid anything that is gonna we just kick it down the road. It's like a rock. We just kind of keep kicking it down the road. That's awesome that you provide that, because conflict resolution, looking back at my own professional life, just knowing the strategies behind that makes your life so much better, because you make so much better decisions. To personalize it a little bit. I mean, and life's all about decisions. It is all about decisions. You're usually where you are in life based off of the choices that you make, and you gotta make good ones. And if you don't know how to make good ones, you're not gonna make good ones. Like, it's
Right.
to put
Yeah.
it so
Yeah.
simple. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm just like
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
something so ABC like, but it
Yeah. Yeah.
when you break
Yeah.
it down.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it was real interesting about, what we do today. Um, and I mentioned it a moment ago. Providing those resources, that's critical because you know you want to stop the bleeding, right? You want to stop the pain that someone is going through in their life, whether or not you know I need a job, I need a house, I need health care. Those are really important things, right? Those are foundational things. But once that those needs are met, then that's really when the Four Horsemen's our acumen. That's really when we do what we're here to do. Because within the realm of coaching, within the realm of mentoring, which is the bread and butter of what we do, you find conflict resolution. So we have lots of training opportunities on conflict resolution. And what what about conflict resolution will ever work if you don't understand communication, right? And so I call communication a superpower, and I break communication down to the very basics, Barney style of what it is. I mean, we start off with, communication is a sender, a message, and a receiver. And if I'm on send mode and you're on send mode, then the message isn't getting across. I mean, that's how basic we start in the communication class that we cover. But then after we get into, you know, other things, whether or not it's community integration, the coaching that we provide, the workforce readiness and stuff like that, all of those things are all components. Remember, I said earlier that any organization that just provides one tool for a person, it's not they're not looking at the whole person, right?
Mm.
If you don't deal with conflict resolution, but I can find you a job, you're not going to keep your job if you don't know how to manage your anger, when someone's talking at you in a way that you don't appreciate or feel disrespected. You're not going to understand how to why your boss fired you if you raised your voice at your boss. But organizations all day long can say, "Hey, I found him a job. I found him a job." But it jobs do no good if you haven't learned the skills on how to keep a job. You know,
Yeah.
and so communication, conflict resolution, um, career counseling. These are all of the necessary tools so that people can get better. And one of the cool things about what the Four Horsemen does, and I this is what I love the most, is I took the exact same training that managers look for in their growth as a manager, that people who are looking into breaking into you know um higher wage, becoming a higher wage earner, where they get personal development from a coach. I use the exact same tools, I use the exact same language, and I do it almost in entirely the exact same way, but I'm targeting the population that I work with being formerly incarcerated. And so they are benefiting from world-class training, coaching, and mentoring that people would pay hundreds of dollars per hour for, that they get for free. And this is the reason why I think that they have a bigger benefit from it.
Oh yeah, that's a really good inside look into that too, because like you said you're former army, and I know that you definitely have to be a former Fort Benning night after I heard breaking it down Barney style. I was like, no, that's definitely Fort Benning.
Yeah.
Someplace
Yeah.
in the line that was Fort Benning. But
Yeah.
that that is so
Yeah.
true. That is so true. What was your rank in the army too? Because I mean from you taking that perspective point of view and reapplying it to the demographic. I mean, they really are benefiting from it's like listening to like Bill Gates talk about finance or something, or computers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So I retired out of the Army as a command sergeant major. And so spent a lot of time in a lot of formations all over the world. Spent some time at Benning. Yes, I did. Um, but my job was a combat engineer, and thoroughly enjoyed it. I jumped out of planes and blew up things for a living.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And I can only imagine how many times you've had to use your own conflict resolution strategies to, to
Yeah.
make your way through.
So I tell you what, everything that I ever did in the military prepared me for what I do today. None more so than being a drill sergeant, though. None
Mm,
more so than being a drill sergeant, because having to understand human nature and be able to figure out how to influence people, right? And so, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. John Maxwell says that. And just being able to figure out how to influence people wherever their mindset is a skill. The Army taught it to me very well as a drill sergeant, and being able to meet my population in their various states of readiness is important to be able to use that type of skill, because certain people are 100% ready. They bought into the Kool-Aid, they're ready to drink, and others are like, don't even bother. Right.
yeah.
And so
Yep.
being able to convince the don't even bothers, to at least get them to sit down and listen and hear it out, it can be tough, but we never offer anything as mandatory with what we do, you know. And so we typically find people that after they've been with it for about 2 or 3 weeks, then they're more inclined to want to stick it all the way out. Um, I've become very good at determining whether or not a person is just looking for a resource provider or looking for a change of life.
That's a good way
You
to put
know,
it.
if you're just looking for resources, I got you. I'll take care of your resource needs. I'll point you in the right direction and help you out. But if you're looking at changing how you think, changing, the person who you want to be, if you're looking at that aspect of you and you stick it through, you're going to see big differences. I stand on my record with the Four Horsemen. We've got plenty of examples of people really making it. I actually have one that recently he applied to become a lineman for Georgia Power, and looks like that's going to go through. So
That's awesome.
w- plenty of examples of that, of success stories.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love hearing it because and yeah, I mean, it looks like, I mean, with the stats you had chatted about before with Atlanta and Georgia, especially, I mean, you definitely have your work cut out for you too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so I ask people, how do they define their success? So it's really important to define it so that you know it when you have it, right?
Yeah, what do most
And
people? How do most people define it? The people that you work with, because that's interesting. I'm sure they probably never been asked that either.
never asking, hearing what they say when I ask them about what are your values, and hearing what they answer when I ask them, how do you define success? It's so different than what you would typically expect. You know, with the values question, we all say I have values, I have morals, but then when hey, so what are they? Give me three of them. You know,
Mm,
many people haven't really sat down to think about, well, what is it that I value? You know, and that's just everybody. And so I help them to see that there's a deficit if you don't have real good answers. But let's kind of, let's pick up some. Do you value your integrity? right? Is
Yeah.
being truthful something that's valuable, right? So we kind of start there. But the success, um, some people really, most of the people I work with just define success as making it. I can't tell you how many times, there's a thing that I go through where I have people uh imagine themselves 10 years in the future, right?
Yeah.
And as part of this drill, it's one of the first things that I do for me to get an understanding of how we can help. But when I say, okay, hey, life is going great, you've gotten everything that you wanted in life, 10 years older, what is it? What's your life like now? What do you have? And you never, I am always amazed, 3-bedroom house. I want a mansion in the yacht, no,
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
I want $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
I never hear that, you know. I never. Most of the time is, look, I just want a good paying job. I want my own business. It's always simple success definitions, and I really, I'm always encouraged by that because we can get that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of hard to make a million if you don't know a millionaire, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of hard to make a million if you don't know the first thing to do, but we can get you a good paying job that has growth in it. We can find, a way for you to purchase a home, and so those aren't stretches of the imagination. You know, that's just the American story.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
we can find your story. And so I'm always encouraged by that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love having those chats with people, because it is really really fascinating. Where do you see yourself five
Yeah.
years, 8 years from now? I actually, and I wrote a I was in, I want to say like seventh grade, I think maybe sixth grade, when my teacher had us write, what we're gonna be like. What Write a letter as to your I don't know if it was like your 18 or 20-year-old self, and
Mhm.
she was gonna mail it to us when we were that age. And I got
Yeah.
I got my letter out of the blue, which is weird because you're just like, no one gets letters anymore, and then
Right.
she sends me the letter that I wrote myself. And I was a 20-year-old, I think it was 20-year-old DEA agent who
Yeah.
already married a nurse, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things
Yeah.
too, but it was funny because when you get that letter you realize like, oh, well, there's a lot of steps involved in there. I was
Yeah.
really really
Yeah.
optimistic on my I think I have a
Yeah.
decent work ethic, but that's just you're doing way too much in that time to become that. But it really does put into perspective, like, okay,
Right.
you will
Mhm.
absolutely hit this age. That is not going to change. It is you are definitively going to hit that age. So if you're at this age now,
Yeah.
and kind of just doing
Yeah.
that little that
Mhm.
staircase, it really does open up your eyes, especially how quick time passes. And
Yeah.
have you ever, like, when you ask someone, um what is it that you want to see yourself doing, or so, or even your goals, what do you value, and they say them out loud, do you ever like ask them or get into a conversation with them where it is you're now comparing their values that they're saying they value, and you're bringing to light kind of the actions they're currently taking to kind of measure out, like, all right, if you value this, this is what you're doing. So like,
Yeah.
to try to even out that,
Excellent.
you know,
Excellent question. And so, short answer is yes. So how I do that is, I use the mnemonic: release, reach, and remain.
mhm.
Right? What is it about you that you need to release because it's not in line with what you say you want, right? In 5 years or 10 years. And what
That
is
is
it
a
about you
really good way to
that you
put it.
need to reach for? Yeah, and so it every single way, it's, if you want it, release the bad things that you're doing so that you can get it. If you want it, reach for the good things that are the thing that you say that you want. And then if you want it, what is about you that's current that you need to remain, right? And so the way that I kind of pose what you're discussing is, now that we have a good understanding of release, reach, and remain, now you can connect that to what you value. Because if you say you want it and you want it in 12 months and you haven't done anything 6 months into it, you're still 12 months away, right?
Yeah.
And so instead of saying I'm a failure, what I get them to see is ask yourself, is this your desire and want, or is it someone else's? Maybe you thought you wanted it, but you're not doing anything towards it. Maybe you don't really want that, right? So giving yourself an out to say, I'm okay to change my mind, right? And so I think that that's a really easy way to get people to understand the self-forgiveness, because people tend to not like to start things because if they think that they're going to fail before they even begin,
Yeah, they don't.
then you're not a failure if you never start,
Yep.
you know, you know. And and then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that you always fail because you never try, right? And so my way is ask yourself why you haven't tried. Is it something that you really want? How do you discover what's purposeful in you? I think the last time I talked before that, those two best days of your life, the day that you're born and the day that you discover your why. And when you discover your why am I here? What is my purpose? How dare you not share your purpose with the rest of the world? Don't hold it back, And so I tried to come at people from that perspective so that they can understand that wherever you are in your head, you're exactly where you're supposed to be so that you can get that lesson so that you can be a better version of yourself tomorrow. Right. And it is a better way to get people to be encouraged by who they are, be accepting of who they are, because it's only through acceptance of who you are with all its flaws and all the pock marks and
Yeah.
whatever and pimples. When you can accept who you are, no matter what, that's step one on the journey towards a better self. And that's what, at the end of the day, that's what the Four Horsemen are all about, is helping you along that journey so that you can be a better version of yourself at the goal or at the finish line.
Yeah, it's just makes me feel like you're like this life realizer, like you're making them realize
Yeah,
where they are, which is
I
just
love
really
that. Yeah.
really great because then they can start. You're giving them like an outline. You're making them create their own outline. It's not you like telling them, "Oh, I
Yes.
do X, Y, and Z," which is really it really is a good insight too because I feel like everybody needs that. Just like everybody kind of needs just like a physical doctor, a mental health doctor, and also somebody just to kind of like throw things off that's not, maybe your immediate friends or family that can be truly independent to just solely you and what you want. Cause I feel like most people like don't necessarily ever sit down for 5 seconds and think, what is it that I want? They kind of just keep rolling with the punches that they've been getting hit by since they were 10 years old. And they're
Yeah.
never necessarily stopping, getting off the train and going like, all right, do I want to get back on? Do I want to wait for the next one? And which direction do I actually want to go?
Yeah. Yes. That's great analogy. That's exactly right. Who has the time to think about thinking?
Yeah.
Right? No one says, wow, let me take some time to think about what I want to think about. That just doesn't happen. And so, but when you do that, that's where the real reflection comes from. I tell people that you're not going to change your life in a 1 hour block of instruction. It's not going to happen. In that 1 hour block of instruction, my job is to help you see all these different opportunities. And then between the time I see you today and the next time we meet, that's where all the growth happens because you're applying what we've discussed, right? And you're seeing things from a different perspective. You're recognizing how you can manage a conversation to keep the other person from getting angry at you, right? You're able to influence someone into doing something that they didn't think that they were going to do when they first encountered you. And when you start figuring those things out, then you move differently in the world. You walk with your back straight a little bit more because you recognize that you have your own agency. And, I'm a hope dealer. That's at the end of the day, I'm here to provide hope for people so that they can see themselves in a different light, so that they can be something that they want, that they never thought that they could ever be. That's my goal. That's all of the reason why the Four Horsemen exists. And we've got all kinds of, cool ways to attack it and get after it. But at the end of the day, I'm just a hope dealer. That's it, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times we think since it's mental and not physical, like it's gonna happen overnight. Like you said, it's not gonna happen in an hour. And I tend to think that we believe that it's gonna take so quick. Like
Right.
it it to me takes the same amount. Like, all right, if you want to have that like fit body like a model, it's gonna take the same amount of time to get your mind right as well. If you want to be like in a different career sense or in a different way in that realm, to where it will take like 6, 7, 8 months, 12 months of actual hard work with your mind just to get yourself on that track, just to start. And I'm very guilty of it myself, because when I left my corporate job last year, I was like, okay, I'm leaving out on last days on a Tuesday. I was like, all right, I'll spend this week just doing what I want. I'll go out that weekend, and then Monday morning, boom, I'm starting
Mhm.
fresh. I'm good to go, and I'm off. And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it didn't happen. It did not
Yeah.
happen. It did not
Mhm,
happen.
mhm.
Really, the first 30 days,
Yeah.
after I left, was really the days that it took me 30 days just to get out of my job mentally.
Yeah.
I wasn't even, and I was like very stressed, because I was trying to implement what I wanted to implement while not even out of my previous setting. And you can't be in two places at once. And that I was like, I kept feeling like a failure because I wasn't getting to where I wanted to be, but I wasn't, out of my element yet, where I needed to take that time. And it takes so much longer than people think to really get on that track. Then we always assume it's like, because we don't see it. We see somebody lifting or working out for
Right.
a year, then we see the results, and we can't see the mental growth that
Exactly.
it takes to have that patience and talking. I've talked to so many people out loud about my thoughts and my vision and this and that and the other, which has also helped as well. Just like you kind
Yeah.
of pull out from your clients. So talking out loud to yourself, I mean, or to somebody else, is really just finally putting it in stone. So that's awesome stuff, man. Awesome stuff. This has been a good freaking episode, I gotta say, man. How can people find you? Because I'd love for people to look into your work and follow you guys and see what you guys have to offer.
Sure. You can find us a number of ways. So the easiest way to find us is online. You can email us at fourhorsemenservices.org, and that's the number four horsemen and the plural MEN. So fourhorsemenservices.org. Or you can just reach out to us by phone. We 404 and we are on a few of the social media platforms. We are on Twitter at Four Horsemen Serve, and on Facebook as Four Horsemen Services. And so, yeah, you can find us in a lot of different places.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. And of course, home base in the Atlanta metro area there too. If you guys are listening and in that area as well. Um
Yeah.
James, I super appreciate you coming on. I mean, what you do is really great, because I mean the people that are formerly incarcerated, I feel like tragically are not serviced or getting resources right now that they absolutely should be, coming out of the circumstances that they have come out of. So, I mean, I really, really thank you for what you do, what you're putting together, and I really can't wait to kind of link up down the road again and see how many more people you've helped, and see those numbers in Atlanta and Georgia kind of start to fall a little bit, and hopefully we can get what you do, take your model and apply it to different cities, because other cities are definitely equally in need of this.
Thank you so much. We've got some things that are coming down the pike right now that I'm not going to jinx, but if it happens the way that we want, we'll be able to provide that glimpse of how to scale up in different places. So thank you for that. You just spoke it into existence, and so I know that it's going to happen now.
Yes, yes. I said it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes. So thanks so much for this opportunity. If you can't tell, I'm a coach, and I spend most of my conversations end up coaching people. And so thank you very much for allowing me to kind of to share some of the things that we do with the Four Horsemen. If you can't tell, I love what I do. I don't work a day in my life because I'm definitely doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so just being able to share that with you and with your listeners is awesome for me, and the opportunity is not something that I take for granted. So thank you.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine, James. Believe me. I love this. And I feel like the same way as you. You know, you're not working a day like this. I love this stuff. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
we'll see you down the road, James.